Call to order a work session of the Goodyear City Council, 20 February 2007. Council members Scott, who is on business this evening, and Council member Souza, who's been ill, are not with us this evening. Hopefully both will be back for our next meeting on Monday. We have two items on our agenda. Both are for discussion only. No action can or will be taken. First, we'll start with, it says Connie, but I think, Jim, you got it, don't you? And City Center projects and the project team assignments.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to talk to you about the process that staff has developed to help address a number of the City Center projects that will be coming online in the very near future. Staff has acknowledged that with the large number of projects revolving around City Center, there needed to be a concerted effort and a strategic plan developed to allow us to facilitate all those projects and ensure that they were coordinated properly and together. To help address this issue, we looked at developing a process that we've titled the Hub and Spoke, and it's on your screens for your viewing. I am, I guess, proud to say I am the hub, and the whole essence of this process is that it allows a number of distinct, separate project teams to work on allowing and encouraging the projects to move forward and maintaining some continuity amongst themselves, because we feel that if we were to treat them separately, that would be the surest road to failure. They all play upon each other, they all work together, and the need and necessity to coordinate those various efforts is absolutely essential to ensure their success. So what you have before you is a diagram that shows the schematic of how the hub and spoke process will work. Each of the spokes represents a different project and a different project team. We've tried to identify all of the projects that we believe are related to or somehow tangentially associated with the city center. We have the stadium, the 100-acre park, library, city hall, universities, infrastructure, airport master planning, performing arts center, city center, the Sun MP portion, city center with the public-private partnership element, and each of those is represented by a team leader who is denoted in the bold print at the upper end of the spoke, and then below that are team members. The team leaders and the team members were selected based on the roles and their specialty that they can bring to the projects. It is not expected that they necessarily hold any one particular key, but that together the different team members all represent various expertises that will be needed in ensuring these projects occur. The team leaders and myself meet on a weekly basis to coordinate, developments with the projects, talk about where things stand, and it's a way for information sharing to occur so that when there are overlapping issues or conflicting issues, they can be identified early and then addressed, and we can move on. We also look for areas where one project may have an issue that affects another project, so we can get that out during these discussions. The teams themselves then meet individually on an as-needed basis to further the projects, and that can, to clarify, they are not necessarily intended to design a project or construct a project. They're there to facilitate it. They will call in all the appropriate resources, internal and external, to see the projects through to success, but their role is to help move them forward in whatever role they need to play. We wanted to make sure you were aware of this so that you can see the efforts staff is making to ensure the successful completion of City Center, so that you can see that we have identified resources internally to address the various projects, and so that the method is open to you in case you have any questions on it. As far as an update goes, we have already advertised initiated the advertisement for the master planning process. for the city center, because that is one of the next key steps to a number of these projects that are identified. We will base that, or step off from the area master plan that was already developed by the city, approved by the council last year, take that information and then roll it into the specific master plan, which then goes into the design and construction of various elements. We will also shortly be working on the public-private partnership element, where we'll be advertising for that opportunity to see what developers and private interests may be out there willing to and interested in working with the city on some city center projects in exchange for whatever opportunities they may need to make it a win-win for them. And in addition, the rest of the projects are in various stages of development, and in some cases they may be just in a holding pattern, but we keep those teams involved because you never know when something on one project will affect what they're doing on theirs. So with that, that is the very brief summary of the hub and spoke and where we stand, where we're going, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have or accept any comments or feedback you may have on the process.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from the public? Okay, this is a good time for us to talk about City Center. It's on the agenda. Talk about our ideas and, you know, what we'd like to see. As I didn't give you a chance to, I should have prompted you on that, but I didn't think about it earlier. But let's take the time just to exchange our ideas on City Center, if we could, over the next few minutes or so. I'll start if no one else wants to. Go ahead. Okay. First off, the hub and scope is a good idea. Hub and spoke is a good idea. You know, one of the Cleveland Indians, what do we call them? We call them the accelerator, right? Because they're accelerating the development of the city center. We believe at least we could take advantage of that opportunity. Therefore, we might better start building in 2009 or thereabouts, and that's one of the reasons you formed this group. But the early ones would be City Hall, Library, Performing Arts, and a council chambers if it were not part of the City Hall. You know, those come to mind as the early ones. And at the same time, we're obviously going to be building high-density housing, offices, or at least in the same general time frame. Where are we on the Performing Arts Center? I get differing views on that, differing inputs.
Well, as far as performing arts goes, I've been working on different options and opportunities that could present themselves to the city. I've actually got a meeting scheduled next week with the city attorney's office to discuss some of the specific details, and then my intention is to come before the council, keeping my fingers crossed for the first meeting in March, to basically get your input and feedback as to how we proceed with a performing arts center. So I don't have anything concrete to present tonight, but there's been a lot of behind-the-scenes work going on and should be ready in the next few weeks to lay out some options for you to then give me direction on.
On the public-private partnership, is that an RFP or an RFI that you've gone out with?
Hasn't gone out yet.
But you mentioned you're going to.
Yes, we'll go out shortly, and there he is. I'll ask Brian because that's his area. RFP, RFI?
We're looking at RFI.
Okay, so that will be an RFI.
Okay, and just one more point, and then we'll get other inputs here. Something I've been thinking about lately. This is something you'd like to talk in private, but you can't do that as a council member. That, you know, we've got a regional mall, we call it Estrella something. Estrella Falls. We've got a city center. We've had it since the 1980s. I think it's time to start giving it a name. Start thinking it as something other than a place for the center of the city, which it isn't, and it won't be. What it's going to be is the focus, or the focal point of the city. center geographically, not at all.
Yeah, I know.
And even less so as we annex. So, and I think of our slogan, and our slogan is feel the connection. And that's all about bringing groups together, demographic groups, age groups, other sorts of things. But it's also about bringing business together with residential. It's about bringing baseball together with schools. It's about bringing all these things, and they're all there at the city center. So, and I'm not recommending these as names, but something I think we should start to think about, maybe have some way of doing that, if council thinks they want a name for this, that it should be something like Diversity Center or Connection Center or something that demonstrates clearly that in the city of Goodyear, we value those concepts. And this is the focal point for bringing us together as a community. City Center just doesn't hack it anymore. You know, it's worked for 15 to 20 years, but now that we're going to do it, we need to give it a title, I think.
Do we want to get the public involved in that?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, to me, that you could throw that out like you naming the coin or something like that, where we could get a number of them, of our citizens.
If only if we want to get it a name. That's the first thing. You know, I think it deserves. I think as the focal of Goodyear, and it is for the future, for the next 20, 30 years anyway, it deserves its own identification.
Mayor, if that is the desire of the council, we can look at possibly including that element with our master planning process that we'll be going through, where we can at least talk to whatever consultant is selected and see if that's an area that they could assist with as part of the master plan, if that is the council's desire to look at naming.
I think we should take advantage of any research we can get.
Sure. See, and you're driving on I-10 over the next 10 years. You don't want city center. It's going to say something else. And people are going to identify it to that area, you know?
More than happy to do that.
Okay. Good. All right.
I have a question on you were asked about performing arts. I'm certainly, have been a supporter of performing arts. What really concerns me is that so many of the performing arts buildings are not doing very well at being sustainable. My question is there a way that we would come up first with how we would make it sustainable, how we would run inside of the building, the performances, what it is to contract them out, who would do all, and have all that set before we even think about putting the building up. Because so many times they put the building up and then the building sits. And so that's my concern on that. As far as the city center, I'm pleased. And Mr. Hub, I think this is a great strategic plan that you've worked out. And I like the comments from the spoke. So I'm looking forward to working with this. And especially that public-private partnership. Because if we can attain that, if we can grasp that, then that means we can open the financial doors to another project that we have delayed that in the city that we really need to work on. That's public safety. So that would be great if we can make that work, and that was my intentions from the very beginning.
Just that. Let me just add something to that. That's a good point, and I think that in building that city center, that's part of this private-public partnership, where you get someone who knows what they're doing to set up something like that. Another problem with performing arts centers is that they sit vacant most of the time, and that is not cost effective. It's like the high school auditoriums. They sit vacant most of the time. They sit there all summer vacant. And you've got rooms in there to maintain that really ought to be utilized some other way. So this is what, of course, as you know, I brought to you with an opportunity for us to look at sharing all of this so that we would have those things going and busy all the time, or as much as possible. This city needs training facilities, and some of the staff has gotten together with me on this, and I've talked to several of the directors, and we've come together with the idea that we could use some of that facility for training. So staff would have a training place. That's one end of it that would be, that would help in that part of it. Secondly, then you'd have a place for possibly putting the council chambers in there, because it's a public building, and it would be very appropriate for council chambers. You'd have a very beautiful chambers in there that would be nicer than anything I've seen in the valley. Along with that, you could have a foyer. Within your foyer of the plan that we're looking at, there would be artwork that we could work with the Fine Arts, the Arts Council, in setting up artwork that was professional artwork that was done by local, show off our local artists, and have this for the public so that the public is using this constantly. And then use a share of it for this person who would be an authority on running the shows, because he knows how to do this kind of thing and make it profitable. And then there would be another side of it, of course, for the nonprofits, where the nonprofits could come in at a fee, a small fee, but at a fee, and make that side of it work. So I think this is a beginning of where we want to go with this. And as you know, I've been working with Jim and another man from this Jim Chapman, who's going to be contacting you council members to talk to you about what's been going on, and to see if this is something that the council would like to pursue any further. But there's a lot of things that have to be done to finalize any of this. But I think it's very exciting. He wants to use people from one of the music schools back east. It's very notable, and use them in here as interns to help work with him on this project. And those people in turn would do master classes for us also in music, and they would outsource to the schools and do several things that would help music grow and the arts in general grow in our community. So there's many opportunities here to make this thing go, and those are some of my ideas. And whatever I'm sure council has council members have other ideas.
I'm assuming the university too would maybe play a role in it.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe I took it too far right now, but
No, you didn't.
No,
That's
I
what
don't
we
think.
wanna
I think
talk
that's
about.
creative.
We want the staff to know what we're thinking.
Yeah.
And I think, kind of follow up what Councilmember Cavalier just said. I was asking him earlier, just where is the West Valley Arts Council in all of this? How are they fitting in? And would they fit in? Do we want to do this alone? Are we trying to do this as a partnership, or just how? So I don't know if you have any ideas about that, or you have any history on it, or whether you, Jim, have been working along those lines either, but just kind of be curious.
We've approached the Arts Council, and at this point, and I don't know what, with the new, with some of the news that's out on the street now with where their building is, that may change, but they would like to be a part of this too, and they would like to use part of it for their performing arts that they do, and I think they should be a very important part of this. I think we should include them, absolutely, in every way we can.
Well, we put a lot of money through the years with the Art Council.
We ought to get something out of it, right?
Why would we stop now on that direction? We can
No,
continue.
I'm all for that,
Yeah.
absolutely, and I hope everyone else is too.
As far as history, Councilmember Holland, over the last 2 years, there isn't a single leader in West Valley Arts Council that I haven't suggested our city center area to.
Team up.
And I'm not in any way criticizing, but not one has ever followed up on that. And for whatever reason, I'm sure there's good reason for that, but they could have been a great partner in the city center with us.
They had representation on the city center.
Who was that?
Julie?
Who? Julie?
Julie was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked to, you name it, and the chairmans and the president and the CEO, and they have other objectives.
Okay.
Just a couple of comments. You're going to need a lot of grease in your grease gun being in the center of that wheel. But no, in all seriousness, on the Performing Arts Center, I actually see the council, maybe the council meeting area, whatever you want to call it, chambers, a little bit separate and apart from the Performing Arts Center, only because I think P&Z would likely use it. We'd have it open for a lot of public meetings and wouldn't want it to conflict.
Well, that's why you would want it.
No, I'm saying that you may or may want to be scheduling the Performing Arts Center on the same Monday night, every Monday night that we have a meeting, and you're going to run into conflict. We've got standing stuff, and I would think that council, similar to Avondale's City Center or City Hall, that the council chambers and the public meeting room is a part of City Hall in the sense that it's easy for all of you get in your cars and you drive down the street right now. It's easy for staff and efficiency purposes, I would think. Be easier to be connected to the same computer network and everything else. But
would you be willing to at least listen to the other option?
Yeah. But I think logistically it may work out better within the City Hall function versus part of the Performing Arts function or Performing Arts Center function. But who knows? Maybe the two will be within walking distance.
When you see the master plan, you may change your mind.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see what they can do.
Yeah.
Right. No, I'm not adverse to it. I just think proximity. I think any meeting room for P&Z. I mean, I would assume that you might, your fire committees, or public safety committees, and whatever other committees you establish may meet in the same room, essentially, as we meet. They may or may not, depending on the presentation.
No, they could. Yeah. Well,
P&Z does. P&Z does today. They sit right here and they meet.
No, I don't mean. I'm sorry.
Right.
That they would meet in the same rooms where they would be performing.
Yeah, the performance and the meeting room are going to be different.
Oh yeah, totally.
Separate
You
and
can
apart.
do
Okay.
both.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But proximity, I think, to City Hall would be important for any of the public meetings
absolutely.
going on. And then, as far as the naming aspect, I'm all for naming if we head down a professional branding path. So if we engage a group of professionals that do this for a living, that we put an RFP out on the street and we ask them to come in and look at our city center, listen to us, and come back to us with options, if we engage professional staff, and then get public feedback and public comment from what they work on, versus what I think we did in the past was we had a citizens committee come up with it, which was great, and we came up with a pretty good slogan. But at the end of the day, there was a lot of discussion up here amongst the seven of us. We couldn't even agree. I'd rather hire professional folks. I mean, you look at any business or if you talk about anything that DMV does or Kierland Commons or Westcore type developers or any of the baseball stuff we've seen all around the nation, that's what they do. They hire a professional team. They talk about branding. They talk about image. They talk about color schemes, everything else, look, feel, synergy, the whole 9 yards, which
No one is opposing that.
yeah. So if we head down that path in the naming aspect, I'm for it. If we start tossing out names, which I think your adjectives are great, but if we start putting names...
No, yeah, I don't care to use I'm just trying to demonstrate.
Needs a label.
I want us to
Needs a label.
indicate to people that we care to come together.
Yeah.
However you do that.
Georgia,
The sooner we do that, though, the better, because each corner, as these private developers come in, which we just saw last Monday night with one of the first ones up north of the post office, Centera. They're already naming it. So it'd almost be
There's a name for everything.
nice to have. Yeah, there's a name for everything. But I mean, if we're
George,
talking
what were
about a
the
name for
four
the
names
center,
of the four quadrants?
so
Pardon me?
waters,
Names for each one.
It's about nature. One is water.
Fire.
Wind, rock.
Rocks.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
something that we could take off on, maybe that's a takeoff. Anyway, just a thought.
my only comments.
Just one more question. We put the city center we're talking about that, and I don't know if we're going to go on to the public safety group. I mean, are you talking about this evening?
No, that'll be in the CIP presentation next.
Okay. I guess since we're making this such a focus, I just feel I don't want anybody to misunderstand what I'm going to say, but to me, the public safety is very, very important. You know, we had this group get together, and they come back and they tell us, you know, hey, you've got to do something, and, you know, we're trying to ease some of the crowding problems that we have in the police area. But we can't fix all those problems. It's an old building, and we have to contend with a lot of those issues. And I guess I just feel that it's important enough that I don't want to take it away from its higher focus, and that we know how important it is. It's almost like saying, when we look at the hub and the spoke, which is a great idea, Jim, it just seems like we've now said this other is not that important. And somehow or another, we have to make sure that our citizens know that it's very, very important to us, and that it still has a very high status. But you don't see that when you hear us talking about the city center. And believe me, I want to walk into a beautiful new chamber just as much as anybody else. Every time I go to Avondale, you know, I just want to throw up. But, you know what I mean? Still, I just very much concerned about this public safety thing.
But Brenda, you know, we all agree with that. I think we've all talked about the need there, and we don't deny that. And it was very difficult for me, because I was like, okay, I've got to get away from the city center, and I've got to give it to public safety. And so I was really in a dilemma. And that is the reason we've talked so much about a public-private partnership, to try to finance that, and that's what we're striving for. But when you look at the total population of the city's workers, where are they? They're in the city hall. And so that's kind of looked at it. We have so many here that we need to give them some space. And so that helped me a little bit. But no, I haven't given up on the other. And if I could find a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, I'd give it to the city.
No, I don't think I was implying that. I was trying hard not to imply that. I think it's very important.
Yeah.
It's just that when I go over there and I see wires strung everywhere, and I know how much work we've had to do to make that place even, so it's not a hostile environment for our police departments. And we probably have other areas too. I look over at Cato, and he's probably got some areas under him that he's like, he doesn't want anybody to go in because there's stuff everywhere. But I guess I'm just concerned, because this is showing the public that we think this is the most important thing, whether we really believe that or not. That's the way it appears.
And I appreciate that point, so it deserves some clarification. That can be the perception this gives off, and so I appreciate that. However, the intention here is not to display that this is a higher or lower priority than anything else. It's that there are a bunch of related projects that all fit together. This does not preclude public safety from being important, but it doesn't fit into the city center model. That's the only reason it's not here. But I appreciate what you're saying, and I think the public, needs to understand that this is not symbolic somehow that we are pushing any other projects, whether it be public safety or otherwise, off to the side. It's just that we have a process for this particular area and all the projects related to it.
Another thing, Jim, is moving quickly on city center is a revenue generator.
That's right.
And from a multitude of sources that will be in the city center. Police and fire admin building is not a revenue generator.
That's right.
But police need revenue to put their folks out on the street. And that is what we're going to bring in in a greater amount, I think, through moving quickly on the city center. No doubt public safety is our number one priority, but taking care of our folks. But to do public safety, you better have money.
Maybe that's part, Mayor, maybe that's part of what we need to play up. We look at these things, and even in the public eye, we don't say, these are all generating income, and this is going to help us move to the next step. And I'm not sure that they understand that. When we go out to our constituents after they understand about the city center, and they're for it. I mean, I haven't heard anybody say, hey, we don't want anything like that, because they know it is involved. But I just think that they look at it as a thing we're doing for ourselves. And that's not so.
You're right, that is not the case, but there can be that perception with some folks.
Further comments? This has been very good, thank you. One last comment, sort of the long pole in the tent for success or failure in the city center, in my mind, is transportation. It's got to be pedestrian friendly, and it's got to be traffic moving friendly. So you don't have a spoke for that.
That would be
Maybe
covered
that's
under infrastructure. Yeah, exactly.
But there is nothing more important. If we don't move people on foot, and move people in vehicles quickly, we fail.
That's right.
Simple as that.
And to help you understand that we agree with you, that'll be part of the master planning process, is the transportation element. So we're aware also that transportation, both pedestrian and vehicular, is paramount to the success of City Center, and we will make sure that that is examined and analyzed as part of the master plan process.
As well as capturing the people so they'll stop in the city center. It's always a dilemma when you're doing the city center because people want to go from point A to point B. But somewhere in that mix, you've got to make sure that those people are going to take that right turn out into the other areas of your city center where it's you generate your revenue.
That's right.
So
Right.
it is a very special, unique job you have to develop that.
Okay. All right, great, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Ken Kennedy, 5-year CIP.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Ken Kennedy. I apologize, I got a little bit of a throat thing going on, but I come to you from the city of Phoenix, where I had 25 years' experience doing similar work. I'm a long time resident of the city of Goodyear. My grandfather was the first mayor of Avondale, so I've been here a long time, and this is not just a column of numbers for me, but I have a vested interest. I'm raising my kids here too, and they're starting to raise their
His
kids.
name's Kennedy?
Chisholm. That's on my mother's side.
Chisholm.
Oh, yeah. Cleveland probably remembers him.
For once, the young guy's not making the old man remarks.
What year was this?
First mayor was what, 1947 or so?
It was in your dissertation?
It's in my dissertation.
Anyway, the purpose of the presentation today, there's two things I'd like to take away. One is to present the draft update and also get some feedback from council. Just a little background. In November, we had Council Advance where we presented a tremendous amount of data to you. It was kind of hard to understand, so we've hopefully made that into some good information now. And also with that, you guys gave us some good direction, and we were asked to move some projects in from the out years, which hopefully we've done. So just, we did make some assumptions. We looked for some alternatives. We found some major competition for CIP dollars. So there's lots of projects competing for CIP dollars, and it's been kind of an interesting process. What we found was a collection of impact fees has decreased. Financial model, we had to revise it. The 5-year plan had to be adjusted to reflect the revised financial model. And what we did was we took, this year we took 6 months worth of actual, and we projected that out for a year, and then we projected that out for 5 years, which is a pretty conservative model. But the good news is if things pick up and we realize some growth, we can either buy our debt service down, we can bring other projects in to the 5-year plan, or projects that are in the 5-year plan, we can move them forward. We thought we'd provide a definition of, this is one of the things that came up in one of the other meetings, just a definition of a CIP project, what it is. A major non-reoccurring expenditure of $50,000 or more, including design, land acquisition, construction, and equipment, will expand or improve the city's physical assets, including facilities and infrastructure, and not maintenance related, and has a life of 10 years or more. And that's a basic guideline. And can be some exceptions made. Kind of a summary of major projects, kind of just a snapshot of some of the bigger projects that we were able to move into the plan. Bullard Wash was in the out years, and now it's in years 10, 11, 11, 12. And that's consistent with the flood control district's 5-year look ahead also, so we want to partner with them on that one. City Hall was in the plan, but it wasn't really funded. Now it's in the plan and it's fully funded. El Cedro, the Loop 303, excuse me, is fully funded at $2 million a year for 6 years. Employment corridors, they were not in the plan at all. They weren't even in the out years. Now they're fully funded in the plans, 7, 8, and 8, 9. Public Safety Administration, it was in the out years, and the way we show it in the plan now is to build phase 1 of the 3 buildings. So there's 3 buildings, so to build it in 3 phases. And that would be one of the larger facilities, and then move police and fire into that facility. And then with that, it allowed us to bring the Public Works corporate yard into the plan also. Public art, we put in the plan at $250,000 a year for 5 years. I think the way the ordinance reads, it's up to 1% of the project cost, and we've not identified projects yet, so we put it in there kind of as a placeholder. So, and I think that starts in next fiscal year, so we can start to look at some projects to provide art. These are some of the projects, larger projects that are not in the CIP, that really don't fit the definition, and they're funded separately. The baseball stadium, the mall, I-10 widening, and the performing arts developer funding, which you guys have discussed a little bit. And where we are now with the non-utility, we've updated it in the handout that you have, and it's fiscally balanced. It includes some alternative funding measures of $99 million worth of bonds over 5 years. And we shifted projects around to make this whole thing work, and made some assumptions on priorities. These are a few projects that are still in the out years. Yuma Road widening and bridge construction, Estrella Parkway Bridge widening, multi-generational center, which was in the out years. It still remains in the out years. El Rio construction, and Sonoran Valley. Those are all still in the out years and not funded at this point. And then just a brief schedule of City Hall, which you've discussed. Master plan next year. Actually, we'll probably get started a little bit sooner than 07, 08. And then design 08, 09, and construction in 09, 10, and 10, 11. That's bond funded at $48 million. This is one of the things you were talking about earlier, and this is some of the interim solutions for public safety. Public safety will be moving into the new Veneta facility, which will give them some breathing room in the interims until we get them something built. Municipal court is looking for a location. They're busting at the seams here. Two of the options is Veneta, and then also the old shopping center at Yuma and Litchfield Road, or the old A.J. Bayless shopping center that not many remember. And City Hall will also move to Veneta.
We remember that.
Are you talking about having a municipal court interim other than this?
Yes.
Where they would have a trial?
Yeah, that's my understanding, yes. They're just busting at the seams here. I know they took out a holding cell the other day to make an office for a person.
But we couldn't move the people somewhere and still have this facility here for them, the whole court?
I'm not sure what the...
It's an option.
It's
an option.
Where's Jeffrey? Yeah.
As an interim?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my concern.
Yeah, it'd be, well, they're not in the 5-year plan at all, the justice facility. They're still in the out years, and they're one of those, phase 2 or phase 3. So they're 6 or 7 years away from a facility, and they need something in that interim. Public Safety Administration, and I've already touched on this, the The study that they did came in at $36 million for a 10-year facility. And what we showed in the plan is an alternative of building one of the three structures at $17 million and occupy it with police and fire. And then as they grow, and it's fiscally prudent to go ahead and expand. And the good news about doing that is it allows us to bring in the Public Works corporate yard into years 11 and 12. And I understand in the corporate yard that we're going out with an RFP for possibly a lease purchase or something like that too. So we're looking at some alternatives, of course, for City Hall and also for the corporate yard. Where we are in the utility now, our non-utilities is fiscally balanced and it's pretty well put together. What you have in the plan there is we've not fiscally balanced it yet, but we have the needs to provide basic service for our citizens, and we're still working on balancing it. So, and that's kind of it's a little different for the utility stuff than the non-utility. You have to be pretty darn close on the utility. You miss on that and you end up not having enough water. So with the projections we use in our model at a zero growth rate, it's a little bit dangerous to do on the utility side, because now if we experience 10% growth or 15% growth, when we start to build these facilities, we can miss our mark. So we're taking a look at the model and possibly putting some growth projections and some other things in there. So, and we'll bring that back to you in May as a fiscally balanced program. What's next is we'd like to receive some feedback, and we'll present the second draft in May and the final draft in June. So I'll open it up for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the public?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
My name's Gary Gelzer. I'm a member of the Planning Commission. I looked at the non-utility 5-year capital improvement project, and while it's very pleasing to see actual numbers in City Hall that represent reality, and also the library, one of the things that concerned me is in the miscellaneous, and this may be a very minor thing, but right now we have $300,000 for the monument entry.
Could you give us your page?
Yeah, page 2.
I'm on page 10 of the non-utility project draft.
Okay. Where are you in there?
Page 10 at the miscellaneous, at
Okay.
the last item, and where you have $300,000 for monument entry signs, and you have nothing budgeted for the entire next 5 years, and then you have $900,000 budgeted for the out years. We spent a fair amount of money on coming up with a design for public art for the center of our streets, for the center of the roadway, for coming off the interstate identification things, and we're starting to see actual tall pylon signs that have the city logo incorporated in them, and P&Z is going to see one tomorrow with a pylon sign with the city logo incorporated into the design. So I really would strongly recommend that we allocate some type of money, because you want to have an ongoing project. You don't want to just put up 10 pieces of Welcome to Goodyear, and then we're never going to do one again for the next 5 years. I think you're failing yourself. You should have some kind of $100,000, $200,000 of the ability to. We're going to put up signs every year, and we're going to increase our presence to the city. I think that's one of the key things that I would see in the non-utility projects. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. And could we respond to that, or?
Why don't you get Jim, get Harvey to speak to the present schedule. And then you can answer the second question.
Mayor, Council, the contract for the first phase of the monument sign was awarded to AB Lighting, and they are in the process of fabricating the signs. I expect them to apply for permits within the next couple of weeks, and they indicate they'll be constructing all of the first phase signs within probably 60 to 90 days. So before the end of this fiscal year, you'll see the first phase of it completed.
Well, then-
$375,000, I believe, that was budgeted in this year's budget.
Is this chart correct or incorrect then?
This one is here, 300,000.
Okay, but there's nothing in '07 or thereafter?
That's right, it's in the out years, that's correct.
Okay.
My recollection is there's 16 of the monument signs, which are the large signs that would be located on the perimeter of the right-of-way, and then there are about 22, 23 of the sculpture-type signs that'll be within the median, sprinkled in the median.
I guess then the question, what do you plan on the out years, I guess? Sounds like we've got a lot coming on board right now.
Yeah, again, I'd have to defer to Harvey on that, the out years, Harvey, it's just kind of a placeholder for what.
Just
additional
placeholder.
signs.
Okay. All right, thank you. Other comments on that subject or any other from the council? Councilmember Holland?
I was just wanting to make sure that we actually responded to Commissioner Gels's question. I think he's asking, and help me here if I'm wrong, but is there something sprinkled in between all that, or are we just going to be able to find some extra money when we need it, or we have an opportunity to put new city signs up? And I'm kind of trying to get to his question that he had. We're going to put everything out now, and then there will be a long period of time, and we won't put anything. Is that where you were?
I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you.
I was going to say, I don't, yeah.
Well, I can't imagine that's going to happen if the Goodyear, if the city center is going to take place. I'm sure along with that will
What we
be
can
some
do
additional.
that might answer the question is, at a future council meeting, we can always bring back to you the locations that are being proposed, because as Harvey mentioned, if there are 20 plus 16, roughly 36 signs going around the city, if we don't see obvious other locations that they need to be fed into, that may be part of the reason why we don't have additional dollars scheduled in the future. So if we show you those locations, if you have ideas that maybe you do want others in the future, we can try to program it in, remembering the theory that if money comes in, something else gets pushed out, either scope, schedule, phasing, or a project in its entirety. But we can certainly look at that with you, if that's acceptable.
Sounds fair to me.
Because that, I think that councils in the future will respond to that, and they won't allow that to go too long without any upgrading and bringing more signs forward or whatever is necessary. But I don't think that city councils in the future are going to allow that to go out.
I beg to differ with you, Vice Mayor. If there is not an allocation in the budget, it will not get done. And what I'm saying to you right now is you allocated 300,000, the project came in at 370,000, and you're not allocating any more money for the next 5 years. And if you allocate 100,000 or 150,000 or 200,000 every year, you will build additional signs in places that you want them done. If you don't allocate the money, you're not going to get it done, because I've seen it happen. I've been coming to these meetings for 6 years now, and if you don't have the budget and if you don't have a line item, it doesn't happen. That's why I'm concerned about this.
I appreciate your concern. I think Mr. Nichols has a proper solution for this, though, and you'll provide us with input in the future.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we can respond accordingly, as can future councils.
Right.
Okay, other comments or questions?
Well, I have a couple of questions.
Sure. Well, let me,
Where you
okay,
gonna
let's start
start?
here and then we'll go this way. Okay.
First, on the 99 million bonded indebtedness, where does that leave us at that point?
In terms of bonding capacity,
Yeah, what is our capacity?
I'll probably defer
Looking
that
at things
to,
as they are now.
to Larry, let him answer that.
Is that, and can you address whether, is that represented in the document we got? Bonding capacity?
The calculation of the bonds available to sell are represented in the document that you have. That is correct. And right now, you have, the term bonding capacity has three different limits that determine what you can sell. The $99 million is included within all three of those limits over that period of time.
Okay, so-
Today, we have approximately $250 million of voter authority, which means that is bond issues the voters have approved. But it is limited to percentage of assessed valuation, and that limit is, going on memory, but I'm going to say approximately $60 to $70 million today, but it increases as we go forward. And the other limit is our property tax levy limit, or the rate limit that we have established, which is a combination of the primary rate and the secondary rate to total $1.60. All three of those variables were managed to get to this number.
Thank you.
Yeah, follow on that? Sure. Frank, is that okay? On the,
Sure.
the bonding is represented in your blue line, but are you representing the capacity total somewhere in the document that we got, and then where we're at and maybe
Well,
each one of the subsections?
For this document, there's a budget summary at the very end.
Page 11 on the non-utility,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
And that's just, yeah, that represents the 99 million.
Right.
Represents the 99 million, yeah, 98.9 million.
Yes.
I'm reading this wrong.
And then
Show
it's-
me where are we pushing up against that limit? We've got our 20% limits on certain,
Oh, that was,
that's not
Those
represented in
calculations
here.
are not presented.
Okay.
No,
That's
no,
what I'm getting
the
at.
answer is presented in there, but none of the
The
calculations.
answer of total bond projections is in there, but how we're pushing up
Projected.
against the ceiling of our limitations is not represented.
That is correct.
That would be helpful, just
That's the
for
question.
future reference.
Yeah, let's
That
question
would be,
it.
that would be helpful, because if we're looking at a CIP, and you tell me we got $99 million in bonds, if I realize that, hey, we've got another, if we've got 105 in projected capacity, then I can ask the question, as I'm sitting here listening to the conversation, I'm figuring, I could ask the question of, okay, maybe we got another 5 million that we could be fitting in, or another 6 or 7 million we could be fitting in if you're projecting capacity at the same rate. See what I'm saying? You see what I'm
I
saying?
understand.
There's a delta between what your projection is in terms of the actual sales and capacity.
Right. At this point in time, it took a 5-year financial model and calculated our ability to pay off the bonds. To go higher than this amount would mean we would have to reallocate other monies to be able to do that. I can go through a very lengthy discussion with you. It was beyond tonight's discussion, but I'm happy to go through the financial model that determined that amount. But it included our ability to reallocate money from the operating budget over to the capital side, as well as levy the secondary property tax at the combined rate. And those were the variables that came into play to cap it at that amount, not the voter approval variable.
Okay.
So the 96 mil is what we're capable of doing it today. That's where we are today.
And
That's the limit.
yes, and that is under the assumptions that we used in the model. That number will change as we go over time. I want you to understand that, and let me give you a simple example of how it changed, just in the last week. Last week, we got in, well, first of all, in projecting this, I had assumed, because of what we had read from the county assessor a year ago, I had assumed that our secondary assessed valuation from existing property would grow by 50% for the 2007 year. Okay? We read a year ago as 52%, so I used 50%, something I thought was conservative. Last week, it came in at 40%, or about $30 million less in assessed valuation than what we assumed originally. Rather than having Ken go back, and he doesn't even know this story because I didn't want to create that stress, he had already balanced the CIP based on the previous numbers we had given. So I went to another of the variables in my assumptions, and I changed my assumed borrowing rate from 5% down to 4%. Next year, if my assessed valuation calculations are high or low, that will determine what bonds will be available for years 2 through 5. Year 1, we've pretty well got that as it relates to the assessed valuation, but market interest rates are variables. There are a lot of variables that determine that calculation. There are estimates that we've made today.
And we get pretty deep into that discussion when we go into the budget cycle every year. It seems like we do, into your logic or into your logic behind the numbers you've come to. But as we approach the CIP and as we approach other things, it would be helpful to have that model, just as a squared plus b squared equals c squared for me back in 7th grade trigonometry or whatever it was I took. It'd be nice, algebra, thank you. But I mean, it'd be nice to have that kind of discussion. I mean, even if it's a boilerplate that every year you've got a certain number of blanks that you're filling in, for us to.
Yes, sir, I would agree.
That.
Yes. The May timetable also links with adoption of the operating the rest of the budget. The capital improvements plan funding is only a portion of the entire budget. And I think in connection, as we lead to that, probably in April to have a work session just simply on the financial model, what assumptions we're making for the first year, as well as the assumptions that led to years 2 through 5 would make a whole lot of sense before you act on final versions both of the entire budget and of the capital improvement plan. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, we're back to Frank. More questions?
Well, I have just a couple more comments. This one I don't think there's an answer to. On the El Rio, and I was talking to our city manager a little bit about this today too, and I didn't get into as deeply as I wanted to. But do you see any partnerships on the horizon in that El Rio project for improving, getting that thing going beyond?
Talking about page 2, Frank?
Beyond what we were talking about here, and that's the way it's set up now. It's money that's out there for their work. But I just wondered if there was something that on the horizon, or anybody who's in charge of that.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, what we do know presently is that Maricopa County, Avondale, Goodyear, Buckeye are the principal parties that are interested in working together in collaboration on the 18 miles of the El Rio project. The first thing we have to do is put together a memorandum of understanding among all the parties as to a governance process. And secondly, what kind of funding could we seek? There's various possibilities, including the developers, which in the course of time we will see them developing their frontage property and being able to advance that. Wherever the cities can participate in that, whether or not we can use improvement districts or some other techniques is also being explored.
Well, is it possible that grants could be applied for in that area, or
yes, and that's one of the
research that,
areas that we are going to look into.
Okay. I think that's all I have to say. That's enough for me. I made enough noise tonight.
I noticed, I know we had a memo on this, but remind me on the Loop 303 right away on the El Cedro project. We've got $2 million in there per year for the next
6 years.
6 years. What's the payback schedule on that? And did we sought authorization before we from ADOT and from FHWA? Well, it's not a federal highway, so it's just a state highway. we sought authorization on that expenditure as well, right?
Yes, what we've done here is that we went through a process with MAG and we sought approval to a new policy that has never been put in place in the Prop 400 funding cycle. Effectively, if we can identify rights-of-way open space, and in this instance 89 acres of land that could then be utilized by ADOT in the ultimate alignment of Loop 303, and they acquire that land, then we're eligible for funding beginning in the year, I believe it's 2015 or 2016. So the maximum amount of money we could collect is the $12 million that's earmarked here. We could end up collecting less than that if an appraisal demonstrated that it was worth only $8 million. So
The likelihood of that in 2016 is pretty slim.
it's very slim because it's based upon the current ability to use the land for its original intended purpose, which was for houses and for industrial commercial. So we think that we're in pretty good shape here. And again, Goodyear's leading the rest of the valley in a strategy to protect the public money and reduce the impacts that same land was originally valued at $40 million. So in 5 to 7 years, it's probably worth $100 million, and it's also going to have houses and buildings and everything else in it. So those were the upsides to going forward with that strategy.
No doubt. It's a good idea to get that done up front. I tend to agree with Mr. Gelser's logic this evening. I might be unpopular up here with the five of us, but on the public art signs, it was something I hadn't picked up on. But I'd rather see $100,000 in there every year to deal with it. We can do that. You know, we can trust future councils, or we can trust the living document. I'd rather trust the living document and get it in there and plug it in there. On the same.
Can you support Nichols' proposal that he'll provide to us where they're going to be?
Right.
And if we want more, we can put them in or ask to have them in.
Right, but I tend to think we're going to I tend to think there's going to be more medians every year and more lane miles every year and more corners every year and street corners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it makes sense to have, $50,000, $100,000 a year in there, such that.
I think we're going to do that. I think that's what was discussed. He'll come back and tell us where they're going, and we'll make that decision.
Okay, well, that wasn't what I heard from either side. I heard that we were going to come back, and talk about where they're going to be, but I didn't hear it was going into the CIP.
No, I think we get
Or did I hear
to
support
say
for it?
there's a problem there, and if we want to remove some monies from something else, we can put it there. That was my impression.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the same token, we've got the $250,000 a year for the public art component, and I don't know what we planned for that, but if we're planning out of that $250,000 to upgrade freeways and upgrade other infrastructure and that sort of thing, take a really hard look at that number and coordinate with ADOT, coordinate with other folks, because I don't know that that number is going to get us the uniqueness and character that some folks have been talking about at City Hall if you plan on drawing from that number. And so I question whether or not, true, if you're going to say 1% for the arts, put 1%. We can say, up to 1%, or according to ordinance such and such, we're putting these dollars in the CIP. But if we're planning on unique characteristics on all of our freeways, $250 a year doesn't go very far. And then, lastly, I think two last things. The court, it doesn't have to be tonight, but in the future, we just talked about an interim court to the south of us. That was kind of a first for me. I don't know that I had heard it. Had we heard it discussed before? Okay, so that was a first for me. I think it was a first for a couple others. It'd be nice to hear more about that later on. And then when you come back with the budget, I talked to Jim about this on the phone. maximizing our payback schedules. I don't know if we are in terms of, and I've heard all kinds of discussion at the state level in terms of 20 versus 30-year payback schedules and that sort of thing. If there are opportunities that exist out there, I'd like to hear about that during the budget cycle in order to stretch the dollar a little bit here, and especially as we get into this discussion about, public safety before City Hall or City Hall before public safety, or, I'd rather see, I'd like my cake and ice cream too. But,
So would I.
if we can stretch the dollars out in order to try and do that, that'd be great.
I just might add, as far as you and I being aware, both of us, I'm sure, are aware that we're going to invest in a new justice facility.
Yes.
It was the courthouse, and having an interim courthouse, that took me by surprise.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I don't know where I heard this, but I know that it's familiar to me, and I was just kind of kibitzing here. And Council Vice Mayor Cavalier said he had also talked about it. I know I've talked about it with someone on staff. It probably came up in some meeting I was in, and we just kind of said, okay, I guess that makes sense, especially after we just got through talking about the judge's contract and the fact that we had just increased so many of the caseload that we had here, and the fact that it was getting so busy. So I guess I just figured
You're right.
everybody
And
knew.
remember the picture? They had the picture of Jeff and the judge sitting in the little room.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we talked about it during the public safety administration facility, fire, police, and court.
Right.
I don't know that we talked about an intern facility, and I'd rather see
Sure.
a discussion about. I don't want to dive into it tonight, but I do somewhat question going into the old Bayless building.
I think what they're doing is just
As an-
looking at
as an
options out there, and that may
investment.
not be
It's
a
an
good
option.
option, but.
That's what I heard. It was an option.
might have to be
Certainly
invested.
understood we're going to talk about a facility that will house people who work in the court system. But I didn't know that we're going to build on an interim basis a new courthouse where you're going to have hearings and trials. That concerns me. Particularly since we're going to have a chamber quarters or something on a permanent center. Okay, Councilmember Lord.
I have nothing else. I just want to reiterate that I don't want the impression to be given that we don't care about public safety. And I want each of the committee members to know that have spent the last number of months working on that committee. It is important to us. And we're trying to juggle all these projects. And that is why we've been so adamant and already have talked, the mayor and I have sat in a meeting before about this public-private partnership very early on about the possibilities of looking into that. And if that happens, which we certainly hope it happens, that's going to free up some funds. So public safety is very, very important, and I agree with the mayor. We're certainly going to bring on the officers to make it all happen, and we're not going to just set you aside for the next number of years. But, okay?
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Opportunity for anyone on council to comment on their current events right now? Opportunity, city manager?
Everybody,
Who's going to do that?
oh, okay.
Yeah. You're going to introduce Bob Connie to do that.
This evening, I would like Connie to make an
You take
introduction.
do that.
Mayor and council, I'd just like to take the opportunity to introduce one of our newest staff members, Matt Hansen. We brought him on board 2.5 months ago, and he's going to be our grants administrator for the city. Matt?
Mayor, council, I have a great opportunity here with the city of Goodyear. I come from 13 years with the U.S. Department of Justice. I feel a little bit like I've been set up tonight following the spoken hub and the CIP budget. I am not the city's pot of gold, but hopefully I can bring a few pieces of gold to the city. And I look forward to speaking with all of you about your priorities and grant needs, obviously the El Rio project. So look forward to meeting with you in the future, and thank you for this opportunity.
Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
I have a question of him. Were you an offensive lineman?
I was a pulling guard playing Division III football back in Pennsylvania. So yes, I was an offensive lineman.
What school is that?
Muhlenberg College in the Lehigh Valley.
Well, welcome.
We don't have any other things other than it's nice to get out before 6:30.
Yes, it is.
Okay, except that
I think
Councilmember
everybody has to wish,
Antoniak has one more comment.
I was told up on the dais by someone else, I think to my left, or she sold them out. I think it's Gary's birthday today. So everybody wish Gary a happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday, Gary.
He's speechless.
That's the first.
Meeting adjourned.